bottom to the top, if we wait until the spring of 2025, that would be a last opportunity to renew the measure before it expires. It would also cause your budget staff, you had a terrific report tonight on your interim budget. If we go into that year without having renewed the parcel tax and your budgets have to project multiple years out, it is hard to not have a qualified budget in those circumstances because you have to project future years without the parcel tax revenue because it is no longer. So that is probably not the optimal, is to wait until 2025. So if we rule out kind of waiting, not to mention the fact that if you lose it, you lost it for a year, and that's $8 million in budget cuts that would immediately come to this group. So we have to look at the other opportunities in front of us. November 2024 presidential general election, that is a possibility. You could do a bond then. That's something that over the years, in the last 6 or 8 years, there's been talk on and off with you and your predecessors about the facilities needs in the district. There are needs, but we're not here to talk about those tonight, but I know you're aware of them. Spring of 2024 would be a special election, only the parcel tax. You can only do bonds at regularly scheduled elections, but parcel taxes, you have the flexibility to do special elections. March of 2024, not June, but March is the regularly scheduled primary election for 2024 because it's a presidential primary. So in California, we do those in March now. We don't wait till June like we do in the state primary years. And then this fall, a November 2023 special parcel tax opportunity. You'll recall from the prior slide, or you may not recall, that the last 2 parcel tax successes we had in this district were in special elections, odd years, May 2015, May 2009. They were not at regularly scheduled elections. The bond was very successful in 2012 at a general election, a presidential election. That doesn't mean we can't do a parcel tax at a regularly scheduled election, but that's sort of what the history's been. And that history in part is due, as Trustee Hurdwell remembers well, lots and lots and lots of parent energy and activism, turning out voters, talking to voters, mobilizing their own grassroots. So, we have to be ready for that. So each of these elections has some pros and cons to it. The next few slides, I know these are in your packet. You had a chance to go through them, so I'm not going to read them all to you. But I think in a special election like November 2023, you do tend to get a little bit of a lower turnout election. It can often be an older electorate. Parcel taxes do offer a senior exemption, unlike bonds do. So that can be an appealing message to voters that are 65 and older. And also in a special election with a lower turnout, you have the opportunity to do that parent mobilization effort where you try to turn out parents and make a bigger impact on an election than you could in an 80% turnout election, right? Because if it's 35% lower turnout, your efforts will make a bigger difference. The presidential primary election in March 24, I would say we project a 60% turnout, 59% tentatively. Presidential primaries are very unpredictable, very unpredictable. In 2016, we were very surprised. We expected the Republican presidential primary to be free for all to the very end, and that Hillary Clinton would run away with the Democratic presidential primary. In fact, it was exactly the opposite. Trump ran away with the Republican side, and the Clinton-Obama went, down to the wire, basically. And so, or Clinton-Sanders, excuse me, went down to the wire. And so there was a lot more Democrat energy at the end and less Republican energy than we expected. And in 2020, again, it was a bit of a surprise. Trump was running basically unopposed on the Republican side, and there were a lot of Democratic candidates running. So a lot of political prognosticators expected there'd be high Democratic enthusiasm, lots of turnout, lots of candidates to choose from. And instead, what you wound up with in March 2020 was a terrified Democratic electorate who did not vote particularly supportively of tax measures at that time. So presidential primaries are really unpredictable. We're looking at an environment where we're probably looking at a very contentious Republican presidential primary with lots of people kind of raising those issues and themes and concerns, and an incumbent Democratic president who appears to be ready to run for re-election, who probably won't have a significant challenge on the Democrat side. So I don't love that election as a target date for you all. I just think the federal context is not ideal, and the unpredictability of primary elections. So I don't love that. So we're to me, that's not a great target for us. We talked about the November 23, that's the closest. Spring 2024 mail-in election, that's an opportunity for us, but it is right on the heels of that March presidential primary. And so the ballots will go out 29 days before the election date because it'll be all mail. So really right in the wake of whatever happens in that presidential primary. Plus those primaries tend to roll on. That's a national story that continues. It's not done in California and then we quit reading about it. There's other states, right? So that one still happens a little bit in the wash of the federal issues. It may still be possible in the spring to do a parent-driven turnout local only election. That's something we would have to, consider carefully. November 2024 presidential general election, everybody votes who's ever going to vote in your community, 89% we project turnout. And tends to be a younger electorate, more voters of color. You don't have a lot of renters in this community, but renters will tend to turn out in the presidential election. So that's one opportunity for us. We have not done parcel taxes in the presidential elections in the past in this district, but we have done a bond successfully then. And then of course, the last minute spring 2025 mail-in special. So that's a lot of information and I look forward to some questions from the board. But the point of all that information is to say that if November 2025 is the last minute, spring 2025 is a last minute wait, we don't love that. And a presidential election is a little ways off, but not something we've done with parcel taxes in the fall. And we don't love the presidential primary of March 24, which could be caught up, I think, in a lot of unpredictable and emotional themes that may not be favorable environment for your tax renewal. That leaves us really with two kind of attractive options to look at. One is that spring 2024, May or June after the presidential primary. And the other is this fall, November 2023. And that feels a little bit tight to some people. It's soon, but on the other hand, if we look at the calendar, we realize we don't actually have that many opportunities in front of us to do this. And we don't want to lose the $8 million in funding. That would be a really hard situation to be in. So we're here tonight to basically say, if we want to keep the door open for those opportunities, we're not making any commitment tonight to be on the ballot in any of those dates, but if we want to keep the door open for those opportunities, we're ready to start a voter survey. And that's the first step. This last slide, and then I promise to stop presenting and take questions and discussion, but this last slide basically shows you the process of a successful election planning. I realize everybody here has been through elections. You all had to win your elections to get on the board. You know what elections are like. When we talk about elections, people generally think of the things on the far right of this slide, the lawn signs and the direct mailers and the fundraising and the phone calls and the door knocking and the talking to your neighbors and they're asking for votes. And that is essential work and it has to be done and you cannot win without that work. But that work is privately funded and volunteer led. The district cannot pay for that kind of work. And in our experience in doing, close to 500 of these over the last 25 years throughout California, the work that's done prior to the board voting to call the election is as important as the work that we do in those last 90 days. And that work starts with a poll and a feasibility study. And then we do what we like to call transparent public engagement, where you talk to both the internal audiences, like your teachers and your staff and your parents, and also your external audiences, your civic leaders, your city council members, your chamber of commerce, and your kind of longtime established citizens and other folks who are influential in the community. And then we bring kind of all that feedback back together to help the board craft a ballot resolution that reflects the wishes of your community, so that by the time we put it on the ballot and take it to voters, we feel confident that it has a really good chance of winning. You don't want to put something forward if you don't think you have a good chance of winning. So that process basically starts after this meeting tonight, where we will go into the field with a voter survey and bring back results to this board in a few weeks, a month or so when we have the results, to talk again about those possible election dates and opportunities, and to tell you what the voter survey says, that likely voters think about what's going on in the schools and what they think about renewing local funding in the form of a parcel tax.
What sort of, can I ask a question?
Go ahead,
what
please.
Sort of number engagement do you have to get from voter feedback on that survey to power it correctly?
This survey, we're planning to do 600 completes. And that's a little better. I think the standard is more like 400, but we get a slightly smaller margin of error, and we can look a little bit more precisely at certain subgroups, like, San Ramon versus Danville, or parents versus non-parents, or something like that, if we have a little bit of a larger sample. So that's why we went 600.
And then if we do that survey now, what's the likelihood of change? Like let's say we do it now, and then we're looking at, November 2024, if we coalesce around that date, how much do you expect that to change with, just narratives in media, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, we live in interesting times and things change. I think one thing about these measures is they do tend to change in voter perception less than like perception of candidates do. But that said, your point is a very good one. And if we ended up coalescing around November 2024, we'd probably renew the polling like a year from now. We'd come back and check again.
I have a question. Are you done?
I was just gonna ask if, what's the cost associated with doing repolling?
I think the
That's a
survey,
fair question to ask.
yeah, no, I think this survey is in the range of like $35,000 to $40,000, something like that.
So there was a recent court decision in California about parcel taxes brought by citizen groups. In this district, we have a lot of very active community members, parents. If we had a community group bring this measure forward, would that make a difference as far as the passing of it by 50%?
That is a great and well-informed question. I'm impressed that you bring it up. The tricky part about that idea is that it probably does not apply very neatly to this district. School districts in California are under the ed code, not the municipal code. That is your law. And there is no initiative power in the ed code in California, which if you think about is probably for the best, because school districts would be fighting off initiatives all the time if regular people could just kind of circulate signatures and put policy initiatives in front of school boards to change all kind of rules. So the power of initiative does not apply to a school district's boundary. So as a practical matter for districts that want to take advantage of this court interpretation, they have to live within the boundaries of a city or county that's pretty closely coterminous to where they operate. And then you could pass an initiative within that municipal or county entity that would direct the funding through that municipal or county entity to the school district. There are places, and the example in the court that actually determined this is San Francisco, which is a city, county, and school district and community college district, all completely exactly coterminous. So in that case, the teachers union led an initiative process. They qualified for the ballot. They passed a measure that was technically a city and county measure, but directed all the money to the schools. And so in this district, I just don't think we could even do it. I don't know how we would possibly, pass a parcel tax countywide that was directed only to the San Ramon Valley Unified School District. I mean, as a political reality, I don't know how we would even accomplish that. So I think it's a very tricky thing to do here because of just the funkiness of your boundaries.
Is there a cost to special elections for the school district?
Yes, that is a good question as well. And I can't tell you what that would be, but you'd have to ask the county for a quote.
But it would be on us if it was a special election.
Yes, just as they give you a bill for holding your board election.
Well, a general election costs money, but a special election costs more money.
That's correct. They're a little less expensive because they're all by mail. They won't set up polling places, but it's worth getting probably a cost vote from the county if they'll give you one.
And then how do you feel, or will you be doing any kind of polling around economics around this? So with, it's again, we're in an interesting time economically as well as politically. And so how does that factor into timing?
Yeah, that's a great point as well. And that's part of why if we don't go in 23, we'll come back and renew the polling, because some of that is just baked into the numbers generally. You don't have to ask voters how they're feeling about the economy. If you put a tax measure in front of them, they're going to be more or less bullish based a little bit on their personal household finances, right? Some people will just always be yes, and some people will just always be no. But for people in the middle, there are a variety of factors. But we will also have certain questions in the survey that are sort of aimed at getting at people's optimism, pessimism, confidence in the economy, et cetera. And if we do another survey in a year, for example, if we didn't go this fall, we'd be able to track that data and we'd be able to compare, this year they're feeling 6 points more optimistic than they were a year ago or something like that. So that's a really good point. We do pay attention to.
And then is there an option of doing it sooner rather than later? And then if that fails, doing it again before it's too late?
Betcha.
Yes.
That's If you look at the history slide, sometimes it takes failing to kind of wake everybody up to the need. The last one we passed a year and a half ahead of time, 2 years ahead of time, something, and we struggled with, is there enough urgency there? But because it was straight renewal, it worked really well. And then we had, smooth, that we're down to the wire. You didn't have to adjust the budgeting because you knew it was continuing.
Yeah, and we're talking like a straight renewal. Is that kind of what or is that part of the?
Well, I think that was the question I was going to ask next. I mean, we saw from the second interim, we need to renew. But Evan also talked about all the things that we're currently funding with one-time money that we're finding really, really helpful, right? Liaisons, counselors are already baked into the budget, but technology, the interventions that are happening after school, all these kind of things. And my wondering, because the last thing you want to do is lose your current tax, because the messaging of you're not increasing taxes works really well. There's a concept of layering that sometimes you come back a couple of years later and you add, you now have a proposal to increase it. The actual act of running a campaign is a really big deal. And looking at November, I'm like, oh my God, so soon, especially because it means you need to be busy in the summer too. And so the idea I've been wondering about, and I know Jared and I have talked about this years before, because it can be confusing, but I do wonder in this community if we could run one campaign for two measures, and one measure is to renew. And so that's kind of like the most basic. If you support our schools, you vote yes, and then you're making the case for what we would do with more money. And hopefully we get 2/3 to vote for both. But I'm just wondering, and I don't know if you guys have ever done this, but it just seems like while you've got everybody in motion, while you've got the fundraising happening, the mailer can describe both of them. I just wonder if there's an economy of scales there. So I would love if you can answer that question.
Yeah, I'd like to answer both questions. So I think first, yes, our sort of basic plan A in drafting the survey was a renewal, although it's a renewal with a couple of advantages built into it. One is we would try and remove the sunset so that you wouldn't have to go out, future boards wouldn't be stuck trying to renew it again. And second is we would try to build in a little bit of an annual adjustment so that the revenue can rise a little bit, couple percentage points a year over time. If according to the CPI or some index like that. So we've had some success doing renewals like that with inflators in the last couple of years in other parts of the Bay Area. So I think that was sort of our plan A, is to pull for that. So it's basically like a straight renewal at the current rate, but it wouldn't lead to some growth over time. It would remove the future uncertainty. So it's a little bit better than just a win of a straight renewal. Okay, that's the plan A. Board member Hurd has kind of raised this question, so we had a chance to think about it, for a couple of days prior to the meeting. It's a great note, and it's an interesting theory. I think the layering concept is 100% right. When you look around the Bay Area and you see some of these districts that have much higher parcel taxes than $144, they did not get there in a single election for $700 or $400 or whatever it is. They layered. They passed one, they renewed one, they layered another 100 or 120 or on top of it, and then over time you build to a number that is sustainable, and it's giving your voters a chance to show, okay, they did what they said they would do. I believe in them. They need a little bit more, but they've proven to be a good investment so far. I'm going to invest a little bit more. And so it kind of that iterative path is like the successful path. That's the way you do it. Two at once is rare. I've seen districts do it with bonds sometimes when they're trying to kind of do two different kinds of things at the same time, and sometimes they can pass. Passing two measures at 2/3 is ambitious, but I think it's potentially worth testing in the survey. I think it may make the renewal itself even less controversial, frankly, and then people's attention.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yes.
I worry though that it's confusing for the voter. It's like, why are they asking twice for money? Why, what am I supposed to do? They're asking for a lot of money here,
Yes. So, right, so what we could do, and we've thought about this, and we'll confer with Dr. Kemp and kind of make a final, as directed decision here, but we could do what's called a split sample survey, where you half the sample, here's the sort of plan A of the renewal with the no sunset and the annual adjustment. The other half, here's that plus a second sort of layered measure. There are some statistical disadvantages to it because you now have a higher margin of error in each of your subsamples on a split survey. And we don't have, in these special elections, as my earlier slide said, we're looking at 35% voter turnout. So we don't have like an infinitely large voter sample to go make phone calls and emails to take the survey. So we can't like grow the sample to like 1,200 and do it that way. So there is some downside to doing it in terms of, just kind of getting a straight read on the data, but it's a very intriguing idea and it would be interesting to test in the survey. So I think we're going to kind of, mull it over a little bit. We'll talk about it with Dr. Kemp, Dr. Malloy, and we'll figure out the survey plan.
And I guess the only thing that I'm thinking about too, while it would be like you were talking about the economy of scale, like if you're gonna go out there and knock on doors and do all the work for it, couple them together, I worry about the other effect of that too. If anybody opposes it, they could both be opposed at the same time, and then you might lose your renewal. I don't know.
I think it's a guarantee. There will be an active group that opposes it. Has happened every time. It's figured into the math.
Got it. Okay.
But the executing the election, and Shelley and Susanna, you've been part of these. It takes over your life, and every single board member and every single union member and every single employee and every single PTA parent and Ed Fund parent and whatever. I mean, it's intense. And that's why I really think it's intriguing. And I wonder if actually the communication about them being layered, of what you keep with one and what you add with the other, actually might be less confusing than going out 2 years later. And wait, didn't they just ask me for money? I just voted for this. And so.
Well, I think that the amount over too, I mean, that matters, right? So I'm assuming that in our study, of polling and stuff, we would also be looking at, not the polling probably, but we would be studying what other, maybe like neighboring districts, their partial taxes are, because as I understand it, ours is very low. It's very modest, yeah. And so if we asked our public, right, to a community to add it, that it really depends how much.
Yeah, I mean, we'll be testing their tax tolerance for sure in the study. And I think, to the point earlier, we will want to make sure that if we do test two of them side by side, they don't sound like we're double charging for the same thing, right? So they will have to say, this is what we do with the existing one, and here's some things we could do better if we had a little bit more money that reads a little bit differently. And we'll just kind of have to identify. So we did spend a little bit of time kicking that around yesterday and today, and we'll do some more thinking about it. But it's an intriguing idea. And I think, there are lots of challenges. November 2023 is fast and would require summer organization. As you saw from the other slides, none of the other elections are like perfect, like, whoa, inviting opportunities, you know what I mean? So they all have a little bit of challenge built into them. So we're just going to kind of use this study as a jumping off point to say, all right, we recommend, this is the best path forward. And we'll bring all that back to you.
If I could just add one other piece that I think the last little bit of work has taught us, and that is we have a clearer sense of what our community who has kids in our schools would like, and we have that standard. We have clarity from our staff, who we've been talking a lot with regarding supports they would like to see, social emotional supports as an example. And we know which programs and services don't have a funding source 2 years from now, clearly spelled out. So what I wanted to offer, because of some of that work that we've been doing, not connected to any parcel process, just trying to figure out how we can provide an equitable service to our students. We've got a lot of that data. And my guess is that because we've asked a lot of people to help us gain that insight, that will help with this process when we get further down the road. It's not like we have to figure out, well, what would we use this for? Like, that's pretty clearly stated. And I'm actually impressed by how much commonality there is to what the needs are. There's not a lot of diversity when I'm, out and about listening, and when we've asked for data, and I'm going back a year or two now when we did some of the other work. There's some pretty significant asks that I would say in my visits with you, because you've been with me, we've heard the same thing from almost every staff, for example. There's not a lot of confusion there regarding what's being asked for, and we're hearing similar things from parents and so forth. So I just wanted to add that as some heavy lifting that's already gone on that can inform this process.
Yeah, and I would like to see that when you're putting together the next report, looking at what a timeline and an actual viability would be for that November 23 election. Like, what does that look like in terms of the impact on our resources and our time? And is it doable? And is there a negative to that then, is part of the decision making? So.
Yep, exactly. I totally couldn't agree more. And absolutely, that would be part of the next report.
So if we held your feet to the fire, you wouldn't be able to point to which one of these you would say are your top two, like your top two opportunities. Yeah, well, so okay.
Well,
I missed it.
I mean, I think they,
November 23rd or number 2023.
I think they all have a little bit of, have a little hair on them, as my dad would say, none of them are smooth. But I think the reason we're doing this today is because I think we have to keep the door open for the best of an imperfect set of options.
Yeah.
And so maybe it's November 2023, maybe it isn't, maybe it's spring of 24, maybe it's the presidential election. We'll find out. And that'll be kind of the, probably because we don't want to leave it to that last minute, right? So we'll probably end up at the presidential election if none of the earlier options look good to us.
So then if November of this year even is an option, then we should do the polling now.
You have to do the polling now if you even want to consider November. I think is.
Yeah, and that's why we're here tonight.
What you said, but didn't really say that blatantly.
Yeah.
We do have one card. Should we take that now? Ida, do you want to come up?
So my comment is more of a question for clarification than a comment, but since y'all aren't really legally inclined to answer this, I'll frame it as something I'm advocating for. So at the last meeting, a member of the public had expressed some concern about how the funding from the parcel tax was distributed between the schools. And that I recall the board's response was that it's distributed equally among the schools. So I guess my question or concern would be, are the parcel tax funds being distributed evenly among the schools or proportionate to the population of each school based on how many faculty and students are there? Because they should be distributed proportionately.
So we definitely can answer your question because it's about the agenda item.
Oh, on the agenda is okay.
Because it's about parcel taxes and Evan, do you want to answer Stella or should I just, I know it was answered in the last meeting and that we pay for teachers with the parcel tax.
I can answer it.
You answer it
Okay.
because you were on the most recent committee,
been-
Shelley.
Because I'm the one that changed it. Our committee changed it the year. It is done proportionally by the number of teachers and students at each school. So the elementary schools, if you look at it, look like they get more of the money because there's more elementary schools and there's more teachers in those schools. So it's divided between elementary, middle, and high school proportionally.
Oh, okay, very good. And if
And probably based on teacher ratio too. So since the student teacher ratio is a little smaller in elementary, that would be the driver on why it looks like elementary gets more.
okay, so if these proposals were done at the same time, if they were layered and proposed together, would this allow the public an opportunity to say only renew but not agree to the additional funding? Or
Yeah, in my idea, you would have two measures. One would be to fund blah, 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 which would be renew. And you'd vote yes or no on that. And then there'd be a second question on the same ballot about, and do you agree to add for these purposes? And so the ballot language has to say, at least generally, what the money goes to.
All right, and trustee Hurd, I definitely do agree with you that transparency will be the best way to get people on board with this, because if you're proposing it layered, the public is more inclined to vote both of them if there's less confusion and if there's if they have sight of why it's structured like that. Okay, thank you for your clarification.
Okay, any other comments, trustees? We have our direction to proceed with the survey, right? Okay. All right, it's 10 o'clock, so
I'd like
Laura's gonna
to-
make a motion for us.
I'd like to make a motion to extend it to just 10:15. Is that enough time? Yeah, to 10:15.
Second,
Roll call vote. Yeah, I think we do roll call vote for extending the meeting.
Roll call vote, student board member Ivan.
Aye.
Board member Van Zee,
Aye.
board member Ordway. Aye. Board member Clark,
aye.
board member Brett,
Aye.
board member Hurd.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, so that was the end of that whole chunk of the meeting. We didn't remove anything from consent that we need to pull up. So now we have the recess the meeting of the Board of Education. Did I miss something? No, I just wondering how much. I think this will be fast. We're going to recess the meeting of the Board of Education and convene the meeting of the San Ramon Valley School District's Joint Powers Financial Authority. And this relates to one of those special funds that we have in that big old budget report we just reviewed. So I'm going to call recess one and open the other. Agenda approval. Can we have a motion to approve the consent agenda for this?
I'll move the item.
I'll second.
Roll call vote, student board member Ivan.
Aye.
Board member Van Zee,
Aye.
board member Ordway. Aye. Board member Clark,
Aye.
board member Brett.
Aye.
Board member Hurd.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, and there are two consent items there. 16.1, confirmation of officers of the San Ramon Valley Unified School District's Joint Powers Financing Authority. And then consideration of acceptance of the financial report of the same financing authority. So we can vote on them together if there's no objection. Have a motion to approve consent?
So moved.
Second,
Roll call vote, student board member Ivan.
Aye.
Board member Van Zee,
Aye.
board member Ordway. Aye. Board member Clark,
aye.
board member Brett.
Aye.
Board member Hurd.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
So now I'm going to adjourn the meeting of the Joint Powers Financing Authority and reopen the board meeting. And now we can do our administrative matters, board reports, which we haven't had in several months. So let's do some quick board reports.
That starts with me.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it has been a while for a lot, and I'll keep it short and simple. Had the opportunity to go to many different school site visits with Dr. Malloy, talking with the students and with the teachers and getting great tours of the programs that are happening on these schools, and it's been fascinating. It's always fun seeing things that were working really well at some campuses, that it's like there's a great opportunity to share some of these, like what works well, and so that we can all grow together. Been to a couple choir festivals, Monte Vista, and then actually attended as a parent San Ramon Valley's just last night. Was able to attend the Bay Valley Chinese School New Year's celebration, and that was fascinating to see. And I think I've never felt more respected anywhere. And so really appreciated that. And then also attended my first Street Smarts meeting, as well as a Town of Danville liaison meeting. There's been just also all sorts of fun meetings. So yeah, that's what I've been doing.
Yeah, real quick one for me, love the school site visits, love hearing the student panels. Love the student panels, especially at, I think, elementary schools. The kids just say whatever they, right? And had a chance to participate, Read Across America. Love that, right? At Walt Disney School. So I read to TK K and second grade students and, saw a fifth grade, actually a fifth grade class actually was working and reading one of our board approved books. I can't pronounce that name because it's Spanish and I didn't take Spanish, but no, loved all the inclusive, diverse books in our schools and got to attend band festival for San Ramon Valley High School. Really, really cool because you saw all the, elementary school, the band, the middle school and high school. And it was just fabulous. And looking forward to like the choir festival that's coming up. So that's it for me.
So I attended the Bay Valley Chinese and I've never had my picture taken that much. It was really, really, they were wonderful and it was really fun. I also have been doing site visits with Dr. Malloy and I can't tell you how much I'm enjoying it. And I'm so impressed truly with our teachers and our paraprofessionals and the staff. Some of the work that's being done in these schools is just truly, truly amazing. These are some dedicated individuals that are delivering the highest quality of education to our kids. And I did get called out by a fifth grader that said that I should use the budget for Taco Tuesdays. So they have opinions about what they want also, and they start very early.
Yeah.
That's what I get for telling them I'm in charge of overseeing the budget. Attended the social and emotional well-being meeting, which is always a treat. The town of Danville meeting, as Jesse said, and all of my site visits and two choir performances, which for me is like coming home. My daughter spent 4 years in choir and I loved it last night at San Ramon Valley High School because I felt like I was just back there for a moment. Anyway, that's it for me.
So a lot of things I have sheets worth, but all kind of the main thing is we have the CAC is running the vocational fair. And in my notes, I failed to put the date down and I do not have it in my head. March 29th. It's at Cal High in the Event Center from 3 to 6. There's I was looking at the list of vendors and there's lots of great vendors, apprentice programs, various community colleges, Cal State programs, a UC program. There's lots of options, military and utilities and city services and stuff. So I just encourage everyone to come, families, students, staff. And then just real quick with winter sports, we had a lot of high school teams that were in the EBAL tournament, NorCal state tournament, and it was, I loved, never made it to a Doherty Valley high school basketball game. I was really bummed. I tried and they kept selling out and I don't live that far and I'm disappointed, but I was able to kind of follow along on social media and San Ramon Valley high school basketball and some girls basketball teams and soccer and just a lot of excitement. Traffics, I am the new chair, which I'm excited about, and we're shifting to in person. So our next board meeting is March 20th, Monday, and it's here in the Ed Center at 3:30. And we've already talked a little bit about what we're doing, and I think we're going to get a lot done this year. About 2 months ago, I went to an education roundtable with Assemblywoman Rebecca Bauer-Cahan, and I was able to highlight our meal program and our child nutrition, and it was really I'm really proud of what we're doing. And I think that she was able to really see how some of that funding that is happening at the state level, how we're able to really use it in a responsible way and a really effective way. And so hopefully there'll be other opportunities for us to show her and other elected officials how we're using the money that they're giving to us. And then lastly, and I had site visits and loved them all. at the San Ramon Valley Unified School District City of San Ramon liaison meeting, they mentioned that they will be finally doing the groundbreaking for the Bollinger Canyon pedestrian bridge that greatly affects our Iron Horse middle school students and our Cal High students that live in that area of San Ramon. And so I'm super excited. I don't know what the date looks like in terms of when it's finished. It keeps kind of getting kicked along, partly because of weather and partly because of supply chain stuff, but they're going to be breaking ground, which is exciting. So
We'll have to start with site visits because I think they are the best new thing that we've added this year. The format, the way we get to talk to students, the way we get to talk to staff, we get to talk to the leadership team, we walk through classes. It's just, so thank you, Dr. Malloy, for coming up with that framework. Most recently, I was at John Baldwin, Quail Run, and Neil Armstrong, and was just so impressed with all three. It's what I needed to see regarding MTSS. I mean, we're doing it. We're doing it, and we should be like spotlighted for the state of California because we're doing it right, and it's really impressive. I've also had a lot of steering committee meetings. I think there's been 2 profile of a learner meetings, deep learning and innovation, 2 equity meetings, all really meaty stuff. The equity meetings are really well attended, which I think is good. And I attended the California Suburban School Districts group meeting that we're a member of on, I think was the 24th. It was kind of funny because one of the questions that came up was related to the new social media lawsuit. And one of the attorneys from F3 was on the call and he said, and Rachel can talk about this because I mean, we had literally just talked about it like, a couple of days before. So that was kind of fun. I'm participating in CSBA's Ledge Action Week this week. I'm meeting in the Senator Glazer and the Rebecca Bauer Cahan meetings tomorrow. So looking forward to that. And I would like to just mention one more thing. We're launching the Talk with the Trustee office hours thing. All 5 of us are, and we all have different days and different schedules, but the district's promoting those on social media. So hopefully we'll get to have some nice conversations with our constituents. Looking forward to those.